forgive me, this California is a lot more like New Mexico than I would have believed. I'm like, they're like 4 seasons a week. Right? It's hot, it's cold, it's hot, it's cold. And so now the setting cold has kind of caught up with me, and that's okay though. I'm glad to have the rain. I'm glad for the life that it brings. And I do want us to remember, to be praying, because they are out there, feel so bad at Relay for Life, tearing down, doing an amazing work in this rain. And just be praying for them and for all the things that God is doing. We're going to be today in Isaiah chapter 58. Isaiah 58, the passage we're going to read, is one of the most important passages in the Scripture. Especially when it comes to kind of painting a picture of what church is supposed to look like. If you want the short version of what it means to be a Christian, what it means to worship, I think Isaiah 58 does a wonderful job of that. So we're going to be in Isaiah 58, verses 1 through 14. If you would, if you're able to, would you rise to your feet as we read the word of the Lord. Beginning in verse 1. Shout it aloud, do not hold back. Raise your voice like a trumpet. Declare to my people their rebellion, and to the house of Jacob their sins. For day after day they seek me out. They seem eager to know my ways, as if they were a nation that does what is right and has not forsaken the commands of its God. They ask me for just decisions and seem eager for God to come near them. Why have we fasted, they say, and you have not seen? Why have we humbled ourselves, and you have not noticed? Yet on the day of your fasting, you do as you please and exploit all your workers. Your fasting ends in quarreling and strife and in striking each other with wicked fists. You cannot fast as you do today and expect your voice to be heard on high. Is this the kind of fast I have chosen? Only a day for a man to humble himself? Is it only for bowing one's head like a reed and for lying on sackcloth and ashes? Is that what you call a fast, a day acceptable to the Lord? Is not this the kind of fasting I have chosen? To loose the chains of injustice, to untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free and to break every yoke. He said, not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter. And to see the naked, to clothe them, and not to turn away from your own flesh and blood. Then your light will break forth like the dawn, and your healing will quickly appear. Then your righteousness will go before you, and the glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. Then you will call, and the Lord will answer. You will cry for help, and he will say, here am I. If you do away with the yoke of oppression and the pointing finger of malicious talk, and if you spend yourselves in behalf of the hungry and satisfy the needs of the oppressed, then your light will rise in the darkness, and your night will become like noonday. The Lord will guide you always. He will satisfy your needs in a sun-scorched land and will strengthen your frame. You will be like a well-watered garden, like a spring whose waters never fail. Your people will rebuild the ancient ruins and will raise up the age-old foundations. You will be called repairer of broken walls, restorer of streets with dwellings. If you keep your feet from breaking the Sabbath and from doing as you please on my holy day, if you call the Sabbath a delight and the Lord's holy day honorable, and if you honor it by not going your own way and not doing as you please or speaking idle words, then you will find your joy in the Lord. And I will cause you to ride on the heights of the land and to feast on the inheritance of your father Jacob. The mouth of the Lord has spoken. This is the word of God for the people of God. Amen. Amen. W.T. Perkins is a Nazarene scholar. He writes of this book of Isaiah. He says, the heart of Isaiah's message from beginning to end, as we have seen, is the salvation that God has in store for his people. The faithful remnant of Israel in the mission that they are to perform in bringing the whole world under Jehovah's dominion. This book, the book of Isaiah, like all parts of the Bible, should encourage us. It should encourage us as we continue to consider this relentless love of God. I know I do this every week, and I'm going to do it again. But I want us to understand this narrative. This relentless pursuit of God that we can trace back at the very least to Abraham, and truly further than that. But to Abraham, a man who out of faith, an elderly man with a barren wife, who trusted God enough to go out, to leave his home, to go to the land of Canaan that God promised to him and his descendants. and made him a promise that through his seed, God would bless this world. And God foretold Abraham that his people, his people would find themselves one day in Egypt. And for 400 years that they would be slaves there. And there God heard their cries. He brought them out of Egypt. He rescued them, brought them into the promised land. But on the way, he drops by Mount Sinai and he gives them the covenant law. He shares this law to the people with Moses. And he taught them in this law that there is a difference between the holy and the common. And what he was trying to point out with them is that in this world, there are the things that are right with God and things that are not. And it is so important that we understand that part of the issues, the reason we see issues in our world, is the separation from our relationship with God. And so he gives them the covenant law, and he teaches them the only way to come into God's presence was through this process of sanctification. That because of sin, we were separated from God's presence, from the place where all of mankind was created to be. And because we were separated from God's presence, we were no longer able to bear his image. And what we reflected back into creation was no longer the perfect image of God, but instead was this skewed vision. And for that reason, Paul even talks about in Romans 8 that all of creation anticipates and looks forward and groans as if in childbearing pains for the day when the sons of man will come back to God. And so he gives them the covenant law, and he starts to talk to them about the holy and the things that are common. He taught them how to prepare themselves to worship God. Right? And then he taught them not just how to prepare themselves to worship God, but he taught them how to actually worship God. And he taught them also how to live as a people of God. And also how to celebrate being in the presence of God. But they struggled. They struggle just like so many people do. They struggle with being this people of God. That's a heavy identity of saying, we are a part of God's people. We are God's chosen ones. We are the people of God. And just like they struggled, I believe that as Christians, we struggle with this today. With how do I be these holy people of God? This person who is supposed to be dedicated entirely with my eyes fixed upon Christ as the author and perfecter of my faith. But how do I do that while I live in this world among the things that don't actually reflect that? Or among people who don't reflect that? We struggle with this today. And I think we all get it. I think every Christian would agree with that there is a tension in this world with the way the world works and the way we're supposed to work. I think we struggle with this in deeper places than sometimes as Christians we care to admit. And so I want you to bear with me a little bit, but I want you to try to understand this. That the implications of this may be bigger than we've imagined. Our faith, our Christianity, our religion, even our church, very easily becomes about us. This is a trap that every one of us easily fall into. Let me explain why. By nature, every person on this planet, it doesn't matter who you are, every person on this planet by nature is egocentric. My life is about me. Everything that we start with is about me. And then we know because society tells us and the church tells us and other people start to tell us, you're not supposed to be all about you. They take you to kindergarten and tell you, you need to start sharing. What? This is ridiculous. Why would I share? I don't even know them. But we learn that we're not supposed to be this way. And we know as Christians that we're not supposed to do this. And so what happens, because this nature is so deeply ingrained in who we are, is that as Christians, we come to church, and without realizing it, far too many times we go from egocentric to sociocentric. And I know we may think, well, that's better. That's right. That's the way it's supposed to be. But what happens is we come into the church, we join the community of the church, and if you walk into almost any church on this planet, you'll see this happen. You walk into the church, and we realize it can't be about me no more. I don't want to be selfish. It has to be about others, because that's what they tell me. And so we join in our groups. And even within the body of Christ, you find little ego, sociocentric groups, little cliques. Oh, we've been here the longest, or we're the people who believe this way, and we're not like them, and we don't speak the same language as them. And we do that. I mean, even if you think about it right now, if you're thinking about it, I guarantee it. even within this church. In your mind, you're trying to divide up how you think the cliques are, even within this church, aren't you? Because that's a true reality of who we are. This is how deeply ingrained being egocentric is. That we have found a Christian loophole. I can come to church, claim to be about others, and divide into small groups that don't have anything to do with that group, but that's okay. I see them on Sunday, I'm high nice, I'm cordial to them. Even when I see them in public, we're cordial to each other, but my group is this small group of people in church that does the whatever this is. Or my group is this people in church that's involved in this. And this is not the image of church that is found anywhere in the scriptures. Not the way God defines it. You see, we're not supposed to be egocentric. We get that. We're not supposed to be sociocentric either. What we are supposed to be is Christ-centric. Amen. We are supposed to come to church and center around Christ. And if we're all centered around the same Christ, then what happens is we are all together as one community. Amen. If Christ is the center of what is happening, the community takes care of itself. But it's difficult for us. I'm not going to lie, I fall into this trap as well. Everybody does. We need to be okay with confessing this as a people. And saying, this is deeply ingrained in who I am, and I need the Spirit to work in me. I need to stop doing this, and I need to stop practicing acts that separate and divide, but bring the church together as one crew. Because Jesus is supposed to be the center of everything. And when he becomes the center of everything, then our very act of worship, our very act of obedience to Christ becomes about others. Because that's what Christ is about. Your very act of worshiping becomes a testimony of this love of Christ in your life. If your life is centered around Christ, the world will see this. And if your love of Christ, if you have this love of Christ and it fills you, in every instance, you will know that you're filled with the love of Christ, because you will also be filled with this love for the people you don't even know. For the people who are not a part of your community. Because you're not here trying to protect this community. Instead, you're trying to bring them people into this community. Saying, I love them so much, I want them to know the peace and the joy and the love that I feel right here. And I am burdened until I feel that. And so we become a people who usher the marginalized into this community that we call church. But listen to what Isaiah writes. This is what God says to the prophet Isaiah. He says, day after day, for day after day, they seek me out. They seem eager to know my ways, as if they were a nation that does what is right and has not forsaken the commands of its God. They ask me for just decisions and seem eager for God to come near them. Do you hear what he's saying? Isaiah is painting a picture of the people who seem eager and seem like the people who think what they're doing is right. When someone says, you seem this way, the implied message is, but you're not actually that way. Let's let that sink in a little bit. They seem like a people who are eager to worship God, but they're not. They claim to be a people. They act as if they're a nation that does what's right and hasn't forsaken the things of its God. Oh yeah, we're Israel. We're the nation of God. We're his people. We love him. We have done nothing wrong. And as the prophet Isaiah is telling them, this is what you think. I have to ask this. Do we only seem eager to know God's ways? And I want us to seriously wrestle with that question. How eager are you to know God's ways? Because I'm going to be honest with you. God's ways may not be what you think they are. We get taught a whole lot of things by our culture and even by our very shallow walk in the churches about what God's ways are. But when you read the scripture, his ways will make you feel very uncomfortable and will make you a person who might be in stark contrast with what the common culture says. Because I'm going to tell you something. Jesus, when you read the gospel, he spent most of his time shutting down the common perceptions of the church. He shut down the common perceptions of the people who said, we're the people of God. We're the nation of God. It's these people on the outside who are rooting it for us. We're just trying to take back our nation and be these strong Jewish people of God the way the scriptures demand us to be. And Jesus says, no, you're not. You've missed the whole point. He insists instead that God's ways are about becoming a community forming, rehumanizing, reordering, absolutely unselfish, loving people who reach out to those who have been previously mistreated by society, including having been mistreated in God's name by the people who claim to be God's people. We would do well to consider that. People, God's people, they believed they were doing everything the way God wanted. And they still wondered, why is it that we're doing all the things you want us to do, and yet all this evil seems to be happening to us and to our world around us? Why have we fasted, they say? Why have you not seen it? Why have we humbled ourselves, and you haven't even noticed? You felt this way? God, I'm doing everything by the book. I've done all the things I'm supposed to do. I'm here. I tithe. I get involved. So why is it that you are not fixing the things in my life? Why is it that I still struggle with my spouse? Why do I still struggle with my kids? Why do I still struggle with my health? Why do I still struggle with my whatever it is, you fill in the blank? Do you not see what I am doing? And I dare say most of us have had a conversation like that with God. But if you stop and you write that down and you look at it, you notice that it's full of a whole lot of first-person pronouns. Me, my, I. See, it's easy for us to fall back into that trap. And why not? Because I have to face this real world and these things really happen to me. And so because of that, it's so tempting. It's so easy for us to turn all of this into something that's about us personally. And to be fair, isn't that what we've been taught? I mean, how many times have we heard that your faith is about a personal relationship with Jesus? I mean, isn't that what it's supposed to be? A personal, individual faith with Jesus? Yes. I mean, it's not wrong. It is about your faith with Christ. But it's about so much more than that. Maybe it's not so much in the way we have a personal relationship with Jesus, but the way the world has conditioned us to believe that that's supposed to look. How it bleeds in all of the cultural stuff into our walk with Christ. You see, so much emphasis has been placed on a personal decision, personal growth, and a personal relationship with Jesus, that what we've done is we have managed to make the communal aspect secondary. It's yeah, it's nice if it happens, but this personal thing is more important. And what's sad is when you read the scriptures, the communal aspect is the most important part of what God is doing in us through Jesus and the Holy Spirit. It's always about the community. It's always about God reaching out to all the world. The entire cosmos is His, and He calls us through Christ to come together to reach all of them. God works, and He offers salvation for every single person who would receive it by faith. This is absolutely true. Please understand that. But that salvation is meant to be a salvation from sin that destroys this love from God and keeps us from loving each other. We have somehow had put into our minds this notion that being saved means I'm saved from the depths of hell. And yet nobody wants to burn forever. It doesn't sound like fun at all. But that's why we've minimized it too. Trying to make literal this thing that God is trying to project into the world. Saying, you know what sin did in the beginning? It brought death because it separated you from me. Your entire existence, you were created for one purpose and one purpose only. And that is to be in a proper relationship with God, to be His image bearer. And when you're not in that relationship, you're dead. And you know it because you feel the chaos. Every person feels that chaos. We feel that emptiness. We feel that struggle, whatever it is. And we fight with everything we are to get it. Whether we want to get power and create war or protest or whatever it is, we're going to do whatever we can to find find peace and find our place to get rid of this uneasiness, that all it lacks is this presence of God. And when we are not in the right relationship with God, we reflect that into this world. And we reflect perversity into this world. And creation suffers. And people suffer because we are not in that relationship. When God says that Christ brings salvation, when God offers us salvation, it's not just a, hey, I'm going to keep you out of the depths of hell. It's, I'm going to bring you into a relationship with me, because anything else is condemnation. That's what he's talking about. That's what we're saved for. And we would do better to start opening our mind and reimagining what salvation is. It's so much bigger than what we've managed to paint it in our factory of say a prayer, get baptized, go out, get more. It's about changing things. How is we getting excited about this, right? This is good stuff. We're saved because now we can receive the love of God, and through that love, listen, we can be restored into his community. Yeah. It's about being his people, his children. That this love saves us from death that we bring into this world when we reject the hungry, when we reject the scared, when we reject the foreigner or the marginalized. But unfortunately, many Christians, we somehow believe that this church, this religion, is supposed to be for our personal benefit. I'm here, God, why don't you see me? He says, yet on the days of your fasting, you do as you please. You exploit all your workers. Your fasting ends in quarreling and strife and in striking each other with wicked fish. You cannot fast as you do today and expect your voice to be heard on high. This is the people of God. They participated in all the motions of worship, but they allowed motions of violence and division to lead their everyday lives. They would come to church, do all of the things, but go out and practice acts of division and force. Friends, what we do, how we worship, it matters. It really does. It makes all the difference in the world. But I think that too many people refuse to participate in acts of worship that humble us and create community. Because to be fair, that's not what's politically correct these days. That's not what the agenda is for the world. They want you to agree with our political stance, whatever it is. But we are called to participate in acts of worship that humble us and that create community. We forget, and I think if we're fair, it's not even that we forget. I think if I'm fair, most Christians, especially in America, have never been taught that even the earliest liturgies were created for the sake of teaching community and Christ-centered worship that led to Christ-centered living, that led to Christ adding to the numbers in the church. We become these whole people that are anti-something else, that we refuse to engage in things that just, that seems odd to me, I'm not going to do it. For instance, when we gathered on Ash Wednesday, we prepared for Lent. And we did so in order to intentionally engage in confession, repentance, and awareness, so that we might, through fasting and praying, better love God and better love this world. We engaged in the physical acts that repostured us to become like Christ in this world. We need to practice more acts of reposturing to go over these in our lives. But sometimes even those we forget about. That's why he says, that's not the kind of fasting I called you to. Instead, he says, is not this the kind of fasting I've chosen? To loose the chains of injustice, to untie the cords of the yoke, to set the oppressed free, to break every yoke. It's not to share your food with the hungry and to provide the poor wanderer with shelter when you see the naked to clothe him. Is it not to turn away from your own flesh and blood? He says, this is what you're called to. I know a lot of times we're like, well, I did the fasting to do the church thing. No, not in order to do the church thing. We are called to fast so we would remember the hungry. So we remember the oppressed. So we remember the marginalized. So we remember those who do not live with the luxuries that we live with every single day. I love Abigail. She gave up her tab. And that's crazy. Well, what does it mean to give that up? And she gave up this thing that she went through the whole thing. She was so wonderful. I said, I don't need this. It's a luxury. I'm blessed by God, and this blessing that I have, and she pours it back, and I love this. I'll pray for you, for God and you. Just do a little picture of me. That's good. Better look at mine. That's why we do this. So what God is sharing through this prophet is that this thing that we do, that the church, the fellowship, the Bible studies, the praying, the singing, even the giving of our tithes, all of this is so that we can uplift others. It's about becoming a community and helping each other. Man, in the way our world is today, and in the way we've turned religion, it's easier and easier not to be community. It's easier to simply be sociocentric or even egocentric, even within the body. I love listening to Francis Chan. He shares a story about once in his church many years ago that a gang member had come into his church. And this guy was a well-known hardcore gang member. He said he came into the church. Long story short, he ended up receiving Christ, came in, got baptized. It was a wonderful celebration. So the guy was just so excited to be a part of what God was doing. He said he wanted to get involved in everything. So about 6 months or so, he started missing Sundays. And eventually, he just stopped coming. He says, one day, I just happened to run into him. He was out in public. And I saw him and I said hi, he was nice. So I did the pastor thing. I said, hey, I haven't seen you in church in a while. Is everything okay? He said, the gang member told me. He says, no, it's not you guys. He says, I guess I just misunderstood what church was. What do you mean? He says, well, when I got jumped into the gang, so my brothers in the gang, they had my back. Day, night, wherever. They went wherever I went. They came to whatever functions I was doing. If someone, my kids or something, they were there. I mean, yeah, they were my birthday, my kids' birthday parties, but if someone came and threatened us, I knew I could call them whenever for whatever I needed. My gang had my back. He said, I guess I just thought that that's what church was going to be like. Francis Chan said, it broke my heart because I realized something. And for the most part, gangs do a better job of being a community than the church does. We really do well to consider that. This is why the gangs grow. Because they're at least meeting the immediate needs of others. They're at least being there and offering some kind of community, some kind of inclusion for people. Are we? Why does this matter if we do it or not anyway? I love what God says. When you do this, he says, then, when you go out and you start reaching out to the oppressed, when you realize that what you do isn't for you, but it's for them, when you do that, then your light will break forth like a dawn. We live in a dark world. You want to bring light into it? You don't vote it in. You want to bring light into it? You don't come in and just hang out. You want to bring light in the world? You do these things. You practice your faith and your worship for the sake of others. And when you do that, then the light will break forth like the dawn and your healing will quickly appear. Your healing will appear. Amen. Then your righteousness will go before you. And the glory of the Lord will be your rear guard. You want someone to have your back? Then God's got your back. Amen. I can put my life in the hands of anybody in this world, of the most powerful army and nation in this world. It doesn't guarantee anything. But if I give my life, everything that I am, and I put it in the hands of God, ain't no one ever going to snatch it from them. Amen. That's where we need to be. He said, then you'll call, and the Lord will answer. You'll cry for help, and he will say, here am I, if you do away with the yoke of oppression, with the pointing finger. The Lord will guide you always. He will satisfy your needs in a sun-scorched land and will strengthen your frame. You'll be like a well-watered garden, like a spring whose waters never fail. Listen to this. Your people, he's talking to the people of God. Your people will rebuild the ancient ruins and raise up the age-old foundations. And you, he's talking to the people. You, the people of God, will be called repairer of broken walls, restorer of streets with dwellings. Can you imagine a church that became called the Restorer? The church that became known as the repairer of broken? This is what we're called to. You know, one of the things I love about this church is there's already this great sense of community in this body here. You know, Kyle did Little League this year, and I was blown away because at Kyle's first game, it was even a little bit, I didn't know how to handle it first. But let me tell you, a good chunk of the church showed up for Kyle's game. They asked me, whatever his game is like, well, here they are. But you always tell people that, right? They're like, whatever, they get it. They showed up. And man, we were rowdy. I was like, well, guys, calm down. Okay, it's a baseball game. But they supported each other. The church was there. It was brilliant. It was awesome. It's what it's supposed to look like. That we're a body, that we're a group, a community, not just here, but even out there. Because listen, if we cannot come together and truly become a community, then we're lying, we're fooling ourselves if we think that we can have any effect in the world out there. We need to become a people who show up with things so they go, man, Kyle's got a whole fan club. Now it's just his church. Their church shows up with these things? Yes, they do. Because I'll tell you one thing I do know about Los Banos, one thing I believe about every single community in this world is they're dying for community. We're just wanting people to come together, to join behind us, to encourage us, to lift us up. And that's supposed to start here. That's what he's saying. If you do this, you will bring together, you will repair the community. The things that divide, they will go away. God is good. See, this is how we engage in our faith, in the restoration of communion through the love of Christ. By practicing these things. I don't confess to you. I get it's hard. But I need to actually confess to you that I have twice this week have absolutely failed to keep them. And I need to apologize to you guys. First, and it started way back. If you notice, we're missing a good chunk of our church family because they're being a good church family. And they're out at the Relay for Life, supporting each other and lifting each other up. And I love that. And God bless them for that. Because that is an act of worship. That's an act of community. That's an act of church. That's an act of testimony into this world. That they would be willing to go out for each other like that. But I feel like I failed as a pastor because what I didn't do is bring this to the church and make a big deal of it. And I watched, Diane pours her heart into the Relay for Life. And she's a cancer survivor. She loves it. And I missed what I was supposed to do as a pastor and call us together as a church and say, we need to support them. We need to push them. We need to do better for her. We need to let her know that she's not spreading herself thin by trying to care for her family, do Relay for Life, and then come in here and do this. And instead, we need to say, we're here with you. We're here with you. And become a community. To be fair, maybe we all should have been there today. Or at least yesterday supporting them. But I failed. Now, that I think we can fix. And I love Diana, I know her heart, and she is going to absolutely forgive me. I'm sure, I pray. But there's another person that I did this to this week. And it's not a person that goes to our church, but I just want to share with you that I did do this. There's a member of our community who asked me to be a part of something very important in their life. And I absolutely forgot about it. I totally forgot about it until a couple hours after I was supposed to do this. And I know I can make all the excuses of, well, I was busy, I had a lot of things, it's kind of out of my norm, my phone wasn't on, but at the end of the day, the reason I missed it is because I didn't make it as important to me as I should have. I failed our community member. And as a representative of this church, that means I failed you. And I failed God. But I say this because I want us to get that this happens. We need to become a body who confesses. I'm not going to do that anymore. We have to be the church that brings restoration to this community. This community desperately needs connectivity.
activity. They need to feel included, to know that they are a part of something so much bigger. We have to start that here. We have to take leaps of faith and say, I'm going to be a part of the community, a part of the church. I'm going to show up at the Little League games. Abigail's got ball coming up, man. I love baseball, so I'm there. At the graduations that are coming up. And then be there to cry as some of the moms have to send their babies off to college and try to keep the dads from jumping around too much. We need to celebrate with each other. We need to cry with each other. We need to become one unit. Be Christ-centered. And that will be our act of worship in this world. And when we do that, then I know that His light will shine forth. And this world will look and say, I just want to be that. So Father, I pray that you would do that with us. I pray that you would take all the ridiculousness that I've said, Father, and just your Spirit convict your truth into each of us. And we would become a people who seek you, who keep our eyes fixed upon you. And we would be so filled and so sanctified with your perfecting love, Father, that we would be absolutely just overwhelmed with the love for our neighbor. And everything about us would be driven and compelled to reach them, to show them that love, that true love, without excuse, without fear, without any kind of caveat or whatever it is, but instead say we are going to go out like Christ in an unsafe, absolutely loving manner that reaches and touches those that no one else would touch, and say, your God loves you and wants you to know that, and I will give myself for you. Let us be that people, Father. I pray for those farmers, for this entire community. I think it would be a wonderful miracle, Lord, if every one of them would know you and drop to their knees and worship you. Oh, that would be to your glory. Let that happen. I lift up all of my brothers and sisters at the different churches today who are reaching out. That all of their body will hear your truth, and they would go out, and we would come together the way you have called us. One people who serve one God, one faith, one baptism. Bless us, Father, we pray this in the name of Christ our Lord. Amen. Amen. Friends, go in the peace of God.